Good afternoon, everyone. Princess Etch here. For those not in the know, I am an Etch A Sketch artist. That is my professional nom de plume. I am otherwise known as Jane. Today I would like to share a story of basically my overall journey as an Etch A Sketch artist. And today's story is going to be an adaptation from an artist talk that I gave at the Harold Washington Library, the main branch of the Chicago Public Library, in February of 2019. I was given a wonderful opportunity by the Chicago Public Library to exhibit my art at their main branch, as well as give an artist talk to the public, and I created a slideshow in correspondence with that artist talk. So today I'm actually going to go through the same slideshow, and I have footage of me speaking at that artist talk, but unfortunately both the audio and the visual quality of said footage is pretty rough. I was speaking in a dark room and there was a slideshow behind me, so I decided what better opportunity to test my brand new microphone and my jerry-rigged Lego stand than to essentially tell this story again with much better technological equipment this time around, or if anything, at least better visual settings as well as audio settings. So I will be using the same exact slideshow, as I said before, and have yet to determine if I'm going to completely cover over myself and just use the slideshow, or if I'm just going to share photos from it, like on the sides of the video. That will be for editing Jane to choose. So without further ado, I will now open the slideshow. Here we go! Hi, my name is Jane Labowich. My professional nom de plume is Princess Etch. As I've stated at the beginning of this video, I am a professional Etch A Sketch artist, and for those of you who have been subscribed to me, you're probably familiar with what that is, but otherwise, I promise you, it is very much so a real thing. This story begins on October 23rd, 1991, the day of my birth. I was born and raised in Michigan. I am the youngest of 5. Here's me with my mom, dad, and siblings. And as you can imagine, it was a pretty full house. Well, my family got a little bit smaller over time. My eldest sister moved out, and my mom and dad got divorced when I was around 3. Now, I grew up in a pretty artistic family. Not only did I have a proclivity for drawing, but this is a drawing that my father made at some point, I don't know exactly when. My dad was actually quite the skilled draftsman, as well as my eldest sister Kelly, who is a skilled painter, and my brother Morris has created some pretty amazing technical illustrations. My other sisters, Angelica and Elizabeth, have skills musically, and Elizabeth is also a poet. So we were a very artistic family. This is around the age that I began Etch-A-Sketching. The photo on the left is me at age 3. Photo on the right is age 4. So age 4 is likely around the time that I first picked up and started using an Etch-A-Sketch. Now, being the youngest of 5, it was inevitable that someone in my family had at some point acquired an Etch A Sketch for a birthday or Christmas or something, so we had an Etch A Sketch just laying around the house. I couldn't tell you its origins, but that's probably where it came from. One of my older siblings. Like most things I owned at that time in my life, it was kind of a communal family toy / hand-me-down situation. This is my grandma. And my grandma is a pretty important part to this story because it was at her house that I first really started playing with an Etch A Sketch. And I would visit my grandma around every other weekend growing up because my mom and dad got divorced when I was 3. So on the weekends that I didn't see my mom, I usually saw my grandma. And my grandma wasn't particularly fond of me watching TV, as well as my siblings. She kind of believed it was, we should be doing more constructive things with our time as children. And I think she also kind of believed in the concept of figuring out what to do on your own and sitting in boredom, which I think is I don't know if that's the lesson she was trying to teach or if she was just being a curmudgeon, but I picked up an Etch A Sketch and started getting pretty obsessed with drawing on it from a pretty young age. Like I said, I picked it up at around age 4. Now, my favorite scene to draw on an Etch A Sketch as a child was this iconic moment in the movie Aladdin. So, Aladdin came out, I believe, in 1994, and it was my favorite Disney movie, and this was my favorite scene in the film. For those not familiar, this is the scene where Aladdin walks up the tall flight of stairs to get all the way to the top to retrieve the magic lamp in the Cave of Wonders. And I could basically only draw staircases on an Etch A Sketch, so this scene was perfect for me. So I would just draw these infinitesimally minute stairs, these little tiny stairs. It almost looked like I was drawing a diagonal on the Etch A Sketch. The stairs were just so tiny. And over time, I started drawing kind of like crude, blocky form of like a pixelated Aladdin that's like super out of proportion climbing up the stairs to retrieve the lamp. And I would draw this scene obsessively as a child, just again and again and again, because I knew stairs I was good at. Enter my brother Morris. So, at some point in my early childhood, Morris showed me that when you turn both knobs on an Etch A Sketch simultaneously, you can create diagonals, which, mind-blowing, right? So, I was definitely, it's like achievement unlocked, right? I, from that point forward, started experimenting more with turning both knobs simultaneously and kind of seeing what happened from there. This is the first record of any Etch A Sketch drawing that I have. This is from January 5th of 2005. So I was 13 years old when I drew this. This gives you a pretty good idea of where my skills were at that age. Also, shout out to Family Dentistry. They are super rad and they've been like my longest fans. So I am incredibly appreciative to have an archive of this drawing because, as many know, in the 90s and early 2000s, digital cameras weren't really a thing yet, and most people didn't have access to that kind of technology. So I have pretty much no record of my art before this point, but this is a pretty decent indicator of where my skills were by around age 13. Also, thanks to Family Dentistry, they gave me braces not once, but twice. I had some teeth problems growing up. I'll just leave it at that. Here is the first digital camera I ever had. You can really tell just how fantastic the quality is. A lot of the Etch A Sketch art that I did around high school / middle school were requests from family and friends. So my brother Morris liked playing Diablo 2, so I did this very easily capable of seeing rendition of the cover art of Diablo 2. And oh my goodness, this first camera I had was horrific, right? I couldn't get it to focus for the life of me. I didn't know much about photography at that point. This, to me, was a landmark rendition. First off, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, fantastic movie. I understand that Willy Wonka is the more revered and loved. This one kind of sticks more closely to the books, but I am obsessed with this movie. I used to watch this movie on repeat again and again and again. Please note the copyright 2006 by Jane L., all rights reserved. This is a copyrighted Jane original. As you can see, I was still learning a lot about facial proportions and everything, but it was around high school, or 2006, that I really started dedicating more time to individual Etch A Sketch renditions. This is one of my favorite things I created during my high school years. It is Stephen Colbert, if you can't tell. Also, you could tell just how great the digital camera still was interacting with me. But I shared this on MySpace because that's where all the kids were in 2007-ish. And I shared it to a Stephen Colbert MySpace page, and they shared it on their MySpace. And I was so incredibly excited. I honestly felt like, all right, I have hit the pinnacle. Things will never get better than this. This is the top of my career. This is an absolute highlight. And I was just so thrilled with this that on January 16th of 2008, I printed out a copy of the profile pictures of the Stephen Colbert MySpace page, just so I could have a physical record of it. And I'm so glad I had the presence of mind to do that. So 16-year-old Jane knew what was up. I also created a series of self-portraits on Etch A Sketch for a project in high school, and this was on the bottom left, the first time I ever did a sideways portrait. It was particularly difficult. As you can see, the eyes are pretty off. The only Etch A Sketch I have a record of still is the bottom right, but I really wish I had a picture of that top right one because I'm really proud of that one still. In my senior year of high school, a college called the American Academy of Art came to visit and do a talk about their college, and they were giving out free Etch A Sketches. So I Etch A Sketched myself, and I kind of look like Estelle Getty in this photo, which honestly, not complaining. This is probably the best thing I made in high school. I made it for my best friend in high school, Emily, and she requested I draw Yoda, so I created this, and I eventually ended up selling it in Chicago. It was one of my first times ever selling an Etch A Sketch rendition, which was super cool. I made this near the end of my senior year of high school. This is the very first Etch A Sketch I ever preserved. Note the two vaguely darker marks on the side of the Etch A Sketch on the right. If there's anything you should know about me other than my love of Etch A Sketch, it's my love of Lemon Demon. I've been a longtime fan. I've been an early subscriber to Neil Cicierega. I've been on YouTube for like 14 years, you know? It's been a journey. So Neil Cicierega used to go to Detroit for Youmacon, an anime convention, and I presented this preserved Etch A Sketch to him at Youmacon. And this was, like I said, my first time preserving an Etch A Sketch, and it did not go as smoothly as I anticipated, and it was a multi-year journey to figure out a better way to make these permanent. This Etch A Sketch here became my first piece of press. I worked at Cedar Point in 2010. It was my first summer after my freshman year of college, and I created this triptych of the skyline using a photo I took on the way to work. I ended up selling it to one of the head honchos at Cedar Point for $50. Now, these were not permanent, but still, I look back and I think, why only $50? Oh, geez. But you know, it's a lesson everyone has to learn, is to know their worth. This Etch A Sketch rendition here is responsible for my very first daily deviation on DeviantArt. For those not familiar, a daily deviation is like a feature on the website, and it used to be quite a big deal. So this is a 5-part rendition of the Loacawan. Apologies for the potential mispronunciation there. But the Loacawan is a famous sculpture that we learned about in art history class, and I was able to finagle Etch A Sketch into an assignment in school, which was super cool. Oh, I should mention that I did end up going to the American Academy of Art, which is located in Chicago. So I pursued a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in illustration. This was literally the first legitimate client I ever had. I got to work with Disney in my senior year of college. I got to create the Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty castles, which were downloadable wallpapers for their website. The left one took around, I believe, 20 hours, and the right one of the Sleeping Beauty castle took around, oh my goodness, maybe 25 hours? 2012 was an interesting year for me. I never expected Etch A Sketch to get political, but there it did. So, once upon a time, a political advisor for the Republican candidate Mitt Romney had made a little bit of a flub on national TV. He stated something along the lines of, Mitt Romney's policies are kind of like an Etch A Sketch, you just shake them up, and thus became known as the Etch A Sketch gaffe. So, yes, Etch A Sketch was suddenly worldwide trending on Twitter, and suddenly everyone was buying Etch A Sketch. It was an incredible time to be an Etch A Sketch artist, so I, of course, hopped on that bandwagon and ended up getting some of my art shown on CNN, which was incredible. 2013 was when I graduated from college, And at the very end of 2013, I was reached out to for a very interesting opportunity to showcase my art at a fashion trade show in Paris. Etch A Sketch is actually a French toy in origin. I was invited to this show because the theme of the trade show was toy. So I put together a little Indiegogo campaign, which is similar to Kickstarter for those not familiar, and I got to go to Paris. And here I am. This was my first time ever leaving the continent of North America. I knew about this much French, and yeah, it was an incredible experience. They had a giant sign that said Princess Etch A Sketch. I wish I could fit that in my luggage going home, but it was a fantastic experience. I mean, there was an architect that designed that space for me to share my work, so truly amazing. Also, my first time ever selling my work in person. So talk about a steep learning curve, trying to communicate with an audience in French. So now I have pretty much no qualms about selling my work because at least I know people speak English. So I had this idea that was percolating in my brain for a few years that I wanted to go to the Art Institute of Chicago and sit in front of Seurat's Sunday on the Grand Jatte, the famous painting, and render it from life on an Etch A Sketch. And this is one of those ideas that I had for years, and I just never pursued it until one day I talked myself into doing it. I said, I gotta do it, I gotta go for it. So I did it. In around early to mid 2016, this would have been around the time that I was working part-time and etch-a-sketching part-time to supplement my income. Around 2016, I went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and over the course of 4 sittings, over 8 hours, I sat in front of the painting and I rendered it from life. So the photo I'm sharing right now is actually from the last sitting. And this is worth noting because for the first 3 sittings of me rendering this painting, the Seurat was actually temporarily in a different gallery where the painting Paris Street Rainy Day by Gustave Caillebotte usually lives. That painting was being renovated at the time, so they chose to relocate the Seurat into that other gallery. The thing of note about that other gallery is that other gallery had a bench to sit on. So I was able to sit for, I'd say, roughly the first 6 of the 8 hours that I spent working on the Seurat. By the time I got to my final sitting, they had relocated the Seurat back into its original gallery, which unfortunately did not have a bench. To this day, I'm not sure. I probably could have asked for a chair, but I just copped a squat on the ground and got to etching. Here is how the Etch A Sketch rendition looked right when I finished it. I had a museum patron hold the Etch A Sketch who saw me struggling to take a photo on my own with my potato phone at the time, and I snapped this photo. It was a very victorious photo I took. Such a wonderful feeling to have finished this painting. It was a particularly difficult rendition, and I became quite intimately acquainted with the original painting. Also, just the experience of sitting in the museum and rendering this from life, the interactions I had with other museum patrons, the wonderful experiences I had, it was truly awesome. Overall, would definitely do again, and have done again since. Well, I shared this online and it became memeified, where many of you are familiar with the infamous scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off where Cameron is observing the painting with deep contemplation. This was made by a fellow Redditor. I shared it on Reddit, on the Chicago subreddit. Someone else shared it on Reddit Pics. It was shared on Imgur. It blew up online. I got press from the strangest sources, including Britney Spears, who out of the blue shared this wonderful article that was written about me. Talk about an incredible endorsement, right? And this eventually wound me up in India. Now, this honestly can be a whole video of its own. This Seurat rendition is absolutely responsible for a trip I went on to India thanks to Intrepid Travel. So I created an Etch A Sketch drawing for Intrepid Travel for every day that I was in India. They sent me me on a free trip to India, all expenses paid, and in exchange, my form of payment to them was to create a drawing for each day. So here is an Etch A Sketch drawing of a tuk-tuk or an auto rickshaw. They were kind of like golf carts, and that's how I got around India, all over the place. And it was hectic and wild and frantic and amazing. I loved it. It was so much fun. The energy of New Delhi was incredible. Moving on, we have this Etch A Sketch of the Hall of Mirrors at I believe the Amber Fort or the Amber Palace. Unfortunately, this all happened 5 years ago, so things are a little bit hazier for me, but this is also one of my favorite renditions that I've ever done. I just love the geometric, reflective quality of it, and to be present in this room, the photos do not do it justice. I mean, every piece on the wall is a piece of mirror. So when the light shone in that region, truly incredible. Architectural wonders like I've never seen before and have never seen since in all of my travels. India is truly a marvelous place. This is Humayun's tomb, which is located, I believe, in New Delhi, and it is quite reminiscent to the Taj Mahal in its shape and general structure, but it's made of, I believe, sandstone instead of marble. All of this is coming from my rote recollection, so some of this might be off, and I will apologize for that in advance. Then, of course, we have the Taj Mahal. Now, this is, for me, the piece de résistance. It is the most time-consuming rendition I did for the trip. I should note that all of these drawings were done after I got back home from India. I just wouldn't have had the time during my trip. Also, it allowed me to truly enjoy the experience of my trip and not have to stress about, like, all of the drawings that I had to do every day. But here it is in all of its splendor and glory, and I'm asking a boatload of money for it on Etsy. If it doesn't sell, that's fine, because this is one of my babies. Took me, every time I tell people a time estimate for this, I always like ballpark it randomly, so people have probably heard different time estimates for this, but I would say, like, at the bare minimum 10 hours, maybe up to 20, somewhere in that very vague ballpark. I know it took me a long time. That got wonderful press, though, so that was a really cool experience that happened thanks to my Seurat Etch A Sketch, because the press I got from that got me in connection with the people at Intrepid Travel who decided to continue riding that wave, and so I got a whole separate press wave again after this trip was concluded and the art was completed. After that, I have had a series of additional adventures in freelance Etch A Sketch artistry. So July 12th is a very important day to me as an Etch A Sketch artist. It is Etch A Sketch Day because with the advent of Twitter holidays, every day is a holiday for something, right? Well, Etch A Sketch Day is July 12th because it celebrates the anniversary of the first day that Etch A Sketch was put on store shelves in 1960. So 2020 was the 60th year anniversary. 2021 now marks 61 years coming up. Probably not as exciting an anniversary, but still celebratable nonetheless. I've done many exciting things for previous Etch A Sketch days, but one of most note would be when I got to go to the Toys R Us headquarters, got to hang out with Jeffrey the Giraffe, who I swear was flirting with me. We didn't speak words to one another, but that giraffe was flirtatious. I swear. Speaking of projects that I left percolating on the back burner for years before finally pursuing, this project was born in my mind in 2012 to do a full-scale representation of a skeleton in Etch A Sketch form. I had this idea in 2012, I started drafting it out, I photographed a skeleton, but back then, many of my skills in planning and using Photoshop and all of that, and even in Etch A Sketching, were not that strong compared to when I did finally pursue this project, which would have been in 2016. After I quit my part-time job, I worked there for 3 years, I told myself it is now or never. I have to pursue this project. I have to do it. I have to get this skeleton idea out of my head. And after finishing the planning for the entire rendition, I decided to completely replan the entire rendition when I decided to include the heart-shaped Etch A Sketch over where the heart is. And I'm so grateful that I did that because I think it was a really good call and it's kind of a little cheeky touch. Anyways, this Etch A Sketch rendition was shown on display at Art Prize, which is a art competition in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and currently it is living in my archives. I would at some point absolutely love to have it on permanent display, some kind of corporate lobby or children's museum or something like that. That would be a dream come true. I would love to sell it someday, but it is, of everything I've ever made, this I would call my baby. So this is a Cartoon Network drawing I did for the Amazing World of Gumball. And this was a kind of crazy experience for me. I had some major hiccups with the video editing aspect of this because I shot it as a time-lapse video for their social media. I also got to work with Crystal Dynamics, who is responsible for the Tomb Raider franchise, to create this officially endorsed Lara Croft Etch A Sketch in celebration of a different Etch A Sketch Day. Etch A Sketch Day really is like Christmas to me because I tend to get not only really cool opportunities, but really fun work, and it's just a really cool time to put a spotlight on not only me, but the Etch A Sketch artist community as a whole, and just Etch A Sketch, you know? It's a cool toy. It's the coolest toy. I've also worked with Callaway Golf on 2 occasions, which is possibly a different client than one might anticipate I would be working with, but they were really cool. You know, having a repeat client's always a fun time. So I got to create these 2, the Apex and the Rogue flat clubs, flat iron clubs, I guess. You could tell just how much knowledge I have of all things Callaway. I'm really proud of both renditions, though. These were particularly detailed technical drawings that had to be done in time-lapse, which is more difficult than it might seem. Now, most people listening right now or watching are probably already thinking Etch A Sketch is a difficult thing, but Etch A Sketching a time-lapse video is even more difficult because in order to position the camera in a way where I can adequately film the drawing, I need to place my body in a way that is less convenient for me to work, and it's harder for me to capture detail. So it's like 5 times as stressful for me to create a drawing on Etch A Sketch when it's being filmed than when I'm just casually doing it at my desk. I've also had the fortune of having my work on display at museums and galleries. Here I am at the Illinois State Museum in Springfield, Illinois, Illinois' capital, and I'm standing in front of some of my Etch A Sketch art that was part of a traveling exhibition about basically art and toys. So I tend to fit those boxes, right? This moment for me it's like a bucket list moment, right? I told myself as a child, I want my art in a museum, and I didn't know if that was going to happen. I wanted it to happen, and to know that it has happened, incredible. Just truly incredible. You are now tuning in to the Jane is bragging about herself the entire time podcast. But yeah, I'm tooting my own horn here, right? I am tooting my own horn. This is an incredible feat for me to have accomplished. I'm celebrating it still. I can't believe it happened. It is cool. I'm jazzed about this experience, and I look at myself in that photo and I just know the gratitude I felt in that moment like 5 years ago, and I still feel it today. Now, I've talked a little bit about what I do as an Etch A Sketch artist to make money. I showcased my art for the very first time at C2E2, which is the Chicago Comics and Entertainment Expo, in 2017. That was my first time doing it. So I brought a bunch of prints and other related products of my art, as well as original Etch A Sketch renditions, and I brought them for sale, and it was awesome. Well, after finishing up Seurat, Sunday, and Lagrange Shot, I decided to revisit the Art Institute of Chicago and go back into that original gallery I mentioned before to finally tackle Gustave Caillebots' Paris Street Rainy Day. So this painting took me even longer than the Seurat. I believe it was 10 hours. It could have been 12. I'll have to check my information there. Maybe I'll add a little asterisk in the video to really specify that one. But this one, I believe, was 9 sittings. So I didn't spend as long per individual sitting, but I definitely went back more. And in a lot of ways, this was an even more difficult rendition for me to do. Architecturally speaking, that building at that corner, oh my goodness, that thing was the bane of my life, but it was also a healthy challenge. So here is how that rendition turned out. Now, the proportions aren't perfect. The Etch A Sketch drawing is not a perfect copy of the original painting, but that's life, right? We're humans, we make mistakes, and in some ways, adding humanity to the art is what really truly makes it a special, incredible thing. So I have sold the Seurat and the Caillebotte, as well as a few other masterwork paintings that I've done on Etch A Sketch. I also got to work with the Bob Ross company, Bob Ross Inc., and I did this Etch A Sketch time-lapse for them, which of course was also a dream come true. Who doesn't love Bob Ross? And as someone who grew up with basic cable, I'm talking like 8 channels, PBS was one of the greatest resources to have growing up, and I watched plenty of Bob Ross. Like, who didn't? If you didn't watch Bob Ross growing up, I am sorry, because you missed out. Oh, and this must have been where I ended the artist talk, because this showcases me in front of my sign for the artist talk at the Chicago Public Library. And that was the name of my show, Etching Between the Lines. I thought I was being pretty clever. I still think I'm being pretty clever. So yes, there I am in all of my glory and splendor. So the show took place from late January to early March of 2019, and I am so glad I did that show when I did, because I do know that 2020 put quite a complication in future shows, and I now live in Maryland. So that is what I will talk about for the end of this. I've worked with Disney Plus / Marvel most recently. There are projects I can't talk about just yet as of May of 2021, but I promise you there's some really cool things that are in the background that I'll be able to reveal soon. I've had global press thanks to Etch A Sketch. I went on oh my gosh, this happened after this. It's so crazy to think about what happened since this artist talk. I got to work with Ripley's Believe It or Not. I traveled across Canada for a media tour with them. A lot of incredible, crazy things have happened, and maybe I'll add those slides just to show a few quick visuals of what's happened the last 2 years. But I did move to Maryland at the very end of 2020, so I am now officially a Marylander, whatever that means, I'm not sure yet, but I'm excited for this new chapter in the East Coast, and Chicago will always be an important part of my journey as an artist, and I always will consider Chicago my home, almost even more so than Michigan. I was born and raised in Michigan, but spent the last decade of my life in Chicago. Chicago's where I found myself. Chicago's where I began my journey as a freelancer. And while I might be celebrating my 5 years of freelance in Maryland, I can't wait to when I can safely return to Chicago and really celebrate out there too. I'm just incredibly grateful for this journey so far. I'm incredibly grateful for the people that I've met thanks to my career in Etch A Sketch artistry. In fact, here is a slide showcasing some of the many wonderful people I've had the fortune of meeting over the years, who are all fellow Etch A Sketch artists. They live all around the US. I even have some Etch A Sketch artist friends that are across the globe. It has been incredibly amazing to meet these kindred spirits who all share this affinity for the same toy. We're all so different. We all have such different interests and life paths and careers and geographic locations, and yet this toy has brought us all together. And please take a moment to pause this video and check out the names of some of these people, because they are all worth checking out. They are all worth following. They are all worth your continued love and devotion. I love all these people. They're all great people. Here's some of the press that I've had the fortune of being on. I've done a lot of morning news. TV loves having a kooky little story for the morning news. You know, they love that. You'll never believe what this girl can do with an Etch A Sketch. I fulfill that purpose. I am born for the morning news, for that silly little 2-minute side story. I love doing those things. So Chicago's been extremely kind to me. And then I've mentioned that I also did that media tour in Canada. I've Skyped in to news castings in the UK and Russia most recently. So definitely been a unique experience to showcase my love of all things Etch A Sketch with news stations around the world. While most people might assume that your life as an Etch A Sketch artist is simply just playing with a toy, I hope that this video provided a little bit more insight as to what I've been up to for the last 5 years. I didn't even showcase the live events that I work at or the workshops that I've taught at. I get commissioned for a lot of smaller projects. I just don't have enough time to share them in this video. I know this is a very long video. One might think that being an Etch A Sketch artist is simply just playing with a toy and just messing around all the time. It is actually very serious business, and it is an incredible and wonderful journey that I've had the fortune of being on. So thank you so much if you've made it to the end of this video. This was an impromptu re-performance of my artist talk from 2019, which I have obviously improvised a fair amount on off the cuff, and I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope that you found some sort of interest or intrigue. Maybe you've been listening to it in the background. Maybe you've been attentively watching to get all of those visuals. Either way, it has been a pleasure telling my story, and I would not be where I am today if it was not for everyone who is watching today. I absolutely attribute the internet to the reason why I have a career today. I absolutely attribute the internet to why it's even possible to have a career in Etch A Sketch of all things. So as I encroach upon the 5-year anniversary of my career as an Etch A Sketch artist, I do really just want to say thanks. It's been an incredible journey. It's been fantastic. And while there are definitely peaks and valleys, I know that I've had a pretty blessed journey so far. And I don't know what these next 5 years hold. Maybe I'll be making another video in 5 years where I recap on my 10-year anniversary. But I gotta say, the first 5 years have been pretty freaking great. So thanks again, everyone, for watching and for supporting me in any way that you have, be it watching or buying something or whatever you do. All right. Bye.